someone has described these forms of karma like cars at the traffic lights. Normally, if the traffic lights are red, then you've got a queue of cars waiting to make a move as soon as the light turns green. And sometimes the habitual karma is not such a strong karma. It's like an old car which cannot accelerate very fast. But if it happens to be at the head of the queue, then maybe it's going to be the one which will give its fruit first, because the other karma cannot catch up with it, because it cannot overtake it immediately when the lights turn green. So sometimes you can't be sure which karma is going to give its fruit first. And the reality of life which we have is that we have a lot of karma in our past, both good or bad. But this karma is always trying to find the opportunity to give its retribution. It's fighting over which is going to give its retribution. Normally what happens is that if we're on a good run of karma, then it will be more good karma which comes to us. But if our luck changes and it starts to go on to a bad run of luck, then it tends to be all the negative karmas which we've done in the past which tend to give their results instead. So the practicality of life, when we don't know what good or bad things we have in our past, is that we try to keep ourselves on the positive side the whole time, so that even though we may have bad karma from our past, but it never gets the chance to give its fruit. Hopefully we get enlightened beforehand, and then it will never give its fruit. But I give a little bit more description of that because it deserves more explanation. When we pass away, our body breaks up. So how can our karma follow us to a new lifetime? What is there, or where is there for the karma to store itself in us, that we can take it with us, take this information with us, so it can influence us in another lifetime? In the mind, yes. And even the mind is not permanent, but the mind carries on. It's like the black box of an aircraft which has crashed. Although the aircraft may be in pieces, but if they go through the wreckage, then eventually they find the black box, which is all the information of all the transactions which took place on the airplane before it crashed. In a similar way, we have a black box which stores up all the karma which pertains to us, not just from that life, but all the previous lives as well. And it's in a very deep part of the mind. It's in a part of the mind where normally we cannot interfere with it. And when we pass away, our minds will look for a new rebirth. But part of that in the mind is the storehouse, or a bank of information about our karma, which will continue to give us influence in lifetimes to come. Normally we don't have the chance to rewrite any of this, okay? But if you ask why certain individuals can meditate, who meditate very well, are able to know about their previous lives and so on, it's because all of this information is there somewhere within our mind. It's just a question of being able to rewind the tape. Find the tape first and then you can rewind it. So it's stored there, and it's stored in a way that cannot be interfered with. This sort of information carries on to new lifetimes, and it affects our future. Because karma is new doesn't mean that it's going to give its influence later down the queue. But I talk about that more in a future lecture. But what I'd like to talk about now, so that's 4 forms of karma so far. Heavy karma, karma close to death,
habitual karma, unintentional karma. These describe how heavy the karma is, on the proviso that normally the heavier the karma is, the more quickly it's going to give its result. Unfortunately, it's not, we cannot say that one karmic action gives one karmic result. There's also the complication that karma can act together to give combined results. And if you want to turn over your page, you see a graph where you see there's a combination of different forms of karma working together. For example, you have a form of karma which is significant in your life. Here we call it the principal karma or janaka kamma. The action of that may be modified by other supplementary forms of karma which you have in your makeup as well. For example, supposing a person has studied hard in many lifetimes. Every lifetime they are reborn, they would tend to do well in their studies. If that person had also, in their past, given scholarships for other people to have a better education, these two forms of karma may come together so that not only does that person do well in their studies, but they also get opportunities to get in a very good institute of education, and they'll become a real genius as a result. So two forms of karma give their results together so that this gives an even stronger result than normally would be expected by one form of karma alone. So this is a combination of karma in the same direction. Same thing could be negative. You can think of an example. The same thing can happen where instead of cooperating together, the forms of karma which come out may be opposed to one another. In which case it would be called obstructing karma. For example, a person may have been very stingy in a previous life. You know what stingy means? So as a result of this stinginess, when they are born in a family which is quite poor. Because they are poor, maybe he doesn't have a very good opportunity for a good education. But maybe this boy has been very helpful to others in their education before. So he was stingy with his money, but helpful to other people who are learning things. So the result of this is that even though his principal karma is one of stinginess, it'll probably go something more like this. Yeah? Oh, I don't see it at all. Even though he's stingy, major karma, but he did help other people with their studies. He may be in a school which is disadvantaged, but he would meet up with a teacher who would give him special help and tuition so that he could keep up with the other children and maybe eventually get into a better school, okay, as a result of his performance. So this would be an example of mostly bad karma being helped out by a good karma which he had been done in the past. The full extent of the bad karma is obstructed by the good karma which he did. Sometimes the effect is stronger than that. A person may have some sort of karma which is so extreme that it terminates completely the effect of the opposing karma. For example, you ever heard of Angulimala? What can you tell me about Angulimala? Who was Angulimala? Right. don't hear much. Anguli means thumb or a finger. Mala means necklace. This is the name of a robber who collected the thumbs of his victim and wore them on a necklace around his neck. So this guy has a very heavy karma. To keep a long story short, he was basically a good guy, but because he did so well in school, people were jealous of him, and they persuaded the teacher to give this guy an impossible task so that they could be rid of him completely. So the teacher set him the task, his graduation task: if you can finish this task, then we will let you graduate, of going out and killing 1,000 people. So, very obedient to his teacher, he went out and did exactly that. He went around the countryside, hacking people down with a sword and collecting up their fingers as proof that he was getting close to his target of 1,000. And he created such havoc in the province where the Buddha was living that the king had to call out the army to track this guy down in order to kill him. Now then, there was one morning when the Buddha was meditating, as was his habit. And each morning the Buddha would meditate to try to find out who he could help the most by going and teaching them that day. And within his meditation, he saw Angulimala was going to be tempted to kill his own mother for the 1,000th thumb which he needed to go around his neck. What do we know about killing one's mother? Heavy karma.